Manoj is going to give us a presentation that is an introduction to scraping using Python. If everyone could give him his attention and give him a great welcome. Here he is.
Should I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. So this is a talk on an introduction to web scraping using Python. And I'm Manoj, and I'm traveling for this conference with some of my friends from India. And I'm currently a university undergrad, and I have been doing Python for the past 3 years, and I love doing programming. Recently, I was working with some startups in India, and mostly they were in data science and data analytics. So that's why I was involved in much of the stuff which involved this kind of techniques that I needed to learn. So this will be completely an introduction talk. So even if you have like a little bit of programming, Python programming experience, you would be benefiting from this. So the agenda for this thing is we'll be discussing a couple of things. One is what is web scraping and some of the useful libraries that are available, and which library to use for which particular job. And then finally, we'll move on to introducing the Scrapy web framework, which is a full-fledged framework in Python. And also we'll discuss when to use Scrapy and when to not. So what is web scraping basically? So I'm guessing that most of you people might have gathered data from the internet using some or the other way. So it is basically a technique for gathering the data from the internet, and it might be a manual process sometimes, because sometimes you try to get the data manually. But another way is if you are a programmer, so you could automate this task and get the data automatically. So you could build some scripts that could fetch the data and parse it automatically, right? So what is the difference between using an APIs? Because most of the people think that you could also get the data from the internet using APIs, and why and when to use APIs versus web scraping. So the basic problem with APIs is they have something called rate limiting, and they do not let you access their entire database, because hitting an API means that you are accessing their database and sending some requests. So they do this rate limiting so that you are not able to send maybe like 10 requests per second, or maybe something like 1 request per second. That depends on organization to organization. And also you are not every organization or every company, they don't allow you to get the entire database. So that's why the reason is if you need to get the data which is not available through an API, you can definitely get it using web scraping. So you can extract any amount of data, and but the only thing is you need to have some certain limits on how you can get the data legally, because sometimes web scraping is not in formal terms legal, but we have certain ways to So what are the usages? So you can extract product information, like job posting, internships, like anything, extract offers and discounts. So these are some usages that I can think of, like crawl forums, social websites, extract data to make a search engine, gathering weather data, and anything you can think of, right? This I have already discussed. It's not rate limited. You can do anonymously access the website and gather the data. Some websites do not have an API, and some data is not accessible through an API, and many more. So what's the general workflow of web scraping? So one, you get the website using any HTTP library. So we are using Python, so I prefer requests. You parse the HTML document using any parsing library. There are many HTML parsers available, and one is so the best one is an LXML parser, which we'll discuss further. And then finally, you store the results in any kind of file, or maybe it might be a database also, like maybe a CSV file, JSON file, or directly you build some pipeline so that the data goes directly to the database, like Mongo or something. But we'll more focus on parsing. So these are some of the useful libraries that are available in Python. So one is Beautiful Soup, another is LXML, Selenium, regex, and Scrapy. Scrapy is darkened because Scrapy is a full-fledged framework, while these are just parsing libraries, while Selenium is used for browser automation that you could use for web scraping also. So let's talk about these libraries one by one. So I'll be discussing like the basic syntax and how you use these libraries. So if you are trying to use any HTTP library, so it will all be Python. So we have like request, URL-lib, and HTTP-lib. You can use any one of them. So the syntax is like pretty easy, like request.get URL-lib dot URL open, and you read the entire web page, and you save that particular response. These are some parsing libraries. So once you have fetched the website, fetched the web page at the HTML structure, you parse it using any parser. Like we have like Beautiful Soup is there in Python, which is like pretty easy to use. And if you need to like learn Beautiful Soup, it's like just a 10-minute task. So you build some soups in Beautiful Soup. It's like a recipe or something. And you pass the HTML doc, like the entire HTML response that you get from any that HTTP libraries, and then it actually parses the entire HTML doc and gives you the entire doc in the form of some specific tags which you could navigate using titles or paths or something like that. Then we have LXML. So LXML is also like similar to Beautiful Soup. So I mean the syntax is like a bit different, but you could get a basic overview here. And then we have finally regex. The only problem with regex would be to learn the syntax, because it's a bit tedious in the beginning. But yeah, it's one of the ways to parse it. And also you need to parse feed the HTML doc as we are doing in Beautiful Soup and LXML. So what are the pros and cons of Beautiful Soup? Which Beautiful Soup has a pretty beautiful API. You just pass the HTML doc, and you could like find any particular tag or ID from that particular parsed document. Then it's pretty easy to use. It can handle like any broken markup, and it's purely in Python, but it's a bit slow. So that's the only cons. With LXML is actually based on top of C libraries like libxml2, and it's pretty fast, and it's not purely in Python. It's like a wrapper on top of C library. And if you have no pure Python requirement, then you can use LXML, and it works well with almost all the Python versions, like from 2.x to 3.x. Then we have regex. So it's the regex library. It's not just used for web scraping, but it's used for various other purposes. So you can like extract any minute amount of text. The only, I think, prerequisite would be to use the symbols, like these symbols, right? And then it could become like complex at some point of time. It's purely baked in Python. It's a part of the standard library. You don't need to use anything. And it's very fast, and it's supposed to like every Python version. Then there's a small comparison between BS4, then LXML and RE, in which there's a simple loop which runs for like 100 elements. And I tried to like do it for all these three, like Beautiful Soup, LXML, and regex. And it's something like the regex takes about like 7 milliseconds, while the LXML one takes about like 232, and the Beautiful Soup one takes about like 1800 seconds. So I think like Beautiful Soup is the slowest one, and then and regex is the fastest. So massive scraping. So if you want to like scrape millions of web pages, then these kind of things would be like slow. Or if you want to make a broad scale web scraper, like if you want to like scrape the entire data of Amazon, it would take some time, but you can't do using Beautiful Soup, because it has a lot of other stuff also, like Ajax calls and stuff, Ajax calls. And if you want to use something that is thoroughly tested, we'll discuss Scrapy, because it is a thoroughly tested framework. And so we'll find out any solution. So Scrapy is a full-fledged web framework, which is just made for scraping, and it's very fast. Like it has entire testing framework. All the tests are written. It's pretty asynchronous, so it actually runs this twisted at the backend. So all the calls are like asynchronous. So that's why it's pretty fast. It has like everything you need to start scraping. So it's like some framework that is similar to Flask or Django, that gives you a base structure, and on top of that structure you could build your own spiders, and it's made in Python. So if you need to like scrape millions of pages, or you need to have some async support, or you don't need to like reinvent the wheel, right? So the workflow in Scrapy is like something different from those from Beautiful Soup and LXML and regex. So you need to define a scraper. So, and then you need to define the items you're going to extract. People who have like some basic experience with like Django or Flask, they would get this thing like items or things. Then you define the items pipeline, which is pretty optional. So item pipeline is basically when you need to like transfer your data into some database through a data pipeline. Then you need to define your items pipeline. If you don't have your items pipeline, you can directly scrape the data and send it to a JSON file. And then finally you run the scraper and everything starts scraping. So let's say we start a small project. So this is a basic workflow. You just do scrapey start project Pycon, right? And it gives you this kind of structure. So you have your scrapey configuration file, which you could manipulate. Then you have your items.py pipelines, which is like optional for you, and your settings and your spiders. So there could be like more than one spiders. So initially you just get one spiders folder in which you could define any n number of spiders. Then what is a scrapey item? So it's like containers that will be loaded with the scraped data, and they work like simple Python dicks, but provide additional protecting against like populating undeclared fields to prevent typos. So you just declare a class and a title and a link and a description. So let's say if there's a website from which I want to like scrape some names and some descriptions like books or something. So I just define this title, link, and description as a scrapey field. And then I just start the scrapey shell and try to like start scraping on a particular website, or maybe start this particular spider. Okay, this is just an item, so we'll do it later. So this is one way of scraping. So you can just do scrapey shell and any website URL, and then you could provide like XPaths or like CSS selectors or any selectors which apply on HTML docs. And then you could like, if you want to like extract any title using XPath, you could just do sel.xpath and then the XPath link and then .extract. So that's it. So what's a spider? So spider is just a class written by the user to scrape data from a website. So I think okay, it's down. So you just need to write a subclass like scrapey.spider. Then you define your start URLs list, which means that from which particular point in a particular website you need to start the scraping. And then you define your parse method, which actually goes into a recursive subcall. So let's take an example. So let's say I made a spider and I give it a name. I give it a start URL, right? The domain is this particular dmoz.org. And then I define my parse method. It says like for Selenium in for selector in response.xpath, this particular XPath. So if you people have like some experience with CSS selectors or XPaths, so this is like pretty easy. And then you call your item, the item class which we made, we instantiate, and then for every like a.text or a.href for the text, we save it in a dict. Save it in a this particular title, keys title, link title, and the description title, and we just keep on yielding this thing. So we just need to like call scrapey crawl this name of the scraper. So the name of the scraper was defined in this particular class. So this particular spider, if I call like scrapey crawl this demo, it will just crawl for this particular spider. If I have like tons of spiders like 1, 2, 3, you can call like scrapey call A, B, C, and so on. So storing the data is the last part. You can use a feed export, which is basically like scrapey crawl this spider name and then output to a file called items.json, right? Or you could use an item pipeline, like maybe if you want to like store the data in a MongoDB database, so you could edit your items.py and send the data to your MongoDB database. So scrapey when not to use. So don't use scrapey if you just want to make a throwaway script, like just a small task, or if you want to crawl a small number of pages, or if you want like pretty simple, because learning scrapey or making spiders in scrapey needs a bit of a learning curve. So, and if you want to like reinvent the wheel again and want to learn the basics, so what should you use? So if you want to make a script which does not have to extract a lot of information, and if you're not afraid of learning something, then use regex. If you want to extract a lot of data and do not have a pure Python requirement, then use LXML. if you want to extract information from broken markup, use Beautiful Soup, because Beautiful Soup is pretty good in handling those broken markups in different websites. And if you want to scrape a lot of pages and want to use a mature scraping framework, then use Scrapy. So what do I prefer? I generally prefer Scrapy. I started web scraping using Beautiful Soup because it was the easiest one, then moved on to like LXML and regex. But I only use Scrapy like when you have to like made large scrapers, like if you want to like scrape some data from Amazon or something, because they have like tons of data, and the database would be also big. So yeah, so that's it.
There's plenty of time for questions, so okay, I'll bring you the mic.
Yeah.
Thanks for the talk, Manoj. I just wondered, have you experienced many cases where sites actively try and block you? Because there's things like, it stands out in their web analytics, fingerprinting.
Oh, so you mean that sometimes you go beyond a certain limit, a certain time limit, and the websites try to block your IP address? Right, exactly. So what you can do on for that is you need to like make a human mimicking. So you need to make your spiders or your scrapers such that it doesn't gets to know that a bot is trying to do this thing. So I'll share an experience that when I was like trying to do this kind of thing on my Facebook profile, so I got blocked instantly in like under like 3 or 4 seconds for like 24 hours. But when you try to do this thing like in a human fashion, so you send the request in a way like just okay. So there are two things. If you're trying to use an API, and if you don't want to get like IP blocked or something like that, try to make the calls in certain time, right? Maybe give a time delay or something, or you could do, or that would also be that would also be right. That can also be, I mean, the Facebook or Twitter can get to know that someone is trying to use a bot, right? But even in that case, what you could do is you could make a random call on a particular number and give a time delay. Let's say if you want to, if you are trying to give a time delay of like 6 seconds, don't give a time delay of 6 seconds. Maybe give a time delay of like between 6 and 10 seconds and make a random function call. So that way you could mimic the calls and people won't get to know. I mean,
Else?
Hi.
yeah.
Hi there. Thanks for the talk. I just wanted to ask this thing that you mentioned about legality of using it. How can you sort of, if you're going to be practicing using this, because I know that that book's just come out, so I've really, apologies for this, I forget the name of the author, but it's just come out by Pact Publishing. And what he's done is that he was explaining at a PyData London talk that he actually built a vagrant VM that you could use that to scrape so that you wouldn't get in any hot water about legality. So, like, what would your recommendation if you wanted to try it in the wild on the web, just to make sure you don't get it, like, just because you raised the thing about legality, I was just curious.
Yeah. By legality, I don't mean that you would be like thrown to a jail or something. But by legality, I mean that these websites, they look after if some bot is trying to like scrape their website, because even if you're trying to scrape a website, you're making some request calls, right, to that particular domain, and they have to like handle those requests like simultaneously. So that's why they track on particular IP addresses and the time duration they are trying to make a request call. So the best way is to mimic the calls in a human way. That's it. Like you would be like unnoticed.
Legality is overrated, hack the planet.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning that regular expressions can only parse regular languages. So there can be some HTML that you can parse with regex. So that might be sometimes you have to use Beautiful Soup or LXML in that case. But then again, there are a lot of places where like you can kind of, well, it kind of sort of looks like it's
exactly.
regular, and screw it. So that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the talk, but I want to know what's your approach when you want to scrape some kind of a dynamic content?
Yeah, Ajax calls or something like that, right? Okay, so there are a couple of ways to handle that situation. So if you're trying to use Beautiful Soup, you can't do that because Beautiful Soup actually works in a way, it fetches an HTML doc, it parses using a parsing library, and then you could use the content as you want to use. But the problem is, let's say there's a website in which you need to like scroll something and then it sends a request, an Ajax call or something, and then a new content pops up into the bottom. So in that case, you could do two things. One is you could use Selenium. So Selenium is basically browser automation. So what Selenium actually do is it works in a way which is exactly same in the way you try to get the content. So it will try to pop up a new web browser instance, let's say a Chrome or Firefox, and then it will open a URL. It will scroll down the page. It will click on the button. And then the drop-down will open. It will move down, click on a new, drop-down item, and then it will open new page and scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. So it exactly works in the human way. So either you can do that. It's Selenium, but the only problem with Selenium is it actually uses a new browser instance. So you would need to have a certain machine, a laptop or something, not on a script on a server. But that also you can remove using something called headless browsers. So there are some stuff, if you might have heard about this ghost.js, I think. It's a JavaScript library, but it can be used in parallel with this Selenium. I haven't tried it yet, but a friend of mine used this ghost.js with Selenium. And the another way of doing this is using Scrapy, but go to the website, and when it makes a call, when you scroll down a page, just open the Chrome Developer Tools, then check all the XHR requests, like which are the Ajax calls, and try to see which particular request it's trying to send. Then if you are able to find that particular request, you could just add that particular URL into your Scrapy Spider and you're done.
Hi, thanks for the talk.
Thank you.
In your experience, how often do sites update their markup, which renders your script? Maybe, I know for smaller sites it might not be such a big concern,
Right.
but for the bigger sites that we want to scrape, and for the British authorities, I don't do this, please. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, no, jokes aside, like, on your experience, for the bigger sites, how often do they update their markup, and how does that affect your script?
It depends. Like, let's say if you are talking about some, like the website of Cardiff University or maybe, anything like that, I don't think like they will be updating their website like daily or maybe in a week or something. But if you talk about websites like Amazon.com or maybe Flipkart or something, so these e-commerce websites, they might try to update their content in a day or something. So I think like it gives you sufficient time to scrape like sufficient content. It might happen that you might get some content which is duplicated, but if you're on a mission to scrape the entire Amazon database, then those things like doesn't matter.
Is it short? Okay.
I hope it's short. You'll see the answer. So with Scrapy, you mentioned that you can kind of define, well, once you get the content, you can then, in like items.py, you can then work out where that content goes to. So write your algorithm to put it in Mongo or something like that. Is that right?
That's the pipelines, yeah.
Pipelines, yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. Do you
item is basically what you want to like get from a website. So if you want to get some stuff, like if there's a website which has a particular table and it has some content like column A, B, C, D, E, so you make your items according like A, B, C, D, E, and then in your spider class you'll try to add that particular content to those keys.
Cool.
Like
so
ABC,
once you get the content, and then you put your pipeline, what's your approach to like writing tests for your kind of pipeline algorithm? Do you do it, or
can you repeat?
Do you write tests for your pipeline?
Oh, for pipelines? No, I haven't.
You should write tests.
Yeah, probably.
So that's all the time we have. Thank you very much.
Okay.